Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Today we've got a special guest, somebody that I have wanted to talk to for quite some time. Legendary sailor, adventurer, done all sorts of crazy trips, and also organizes a lot of the old school, old style, and new style round the world races. None other than Don McIntyre, and he is essentially he's over in France right now, and he agreed, and we got a good podcast conversation. We get into a little bit of everything, not only what he does now as far as the Golden Globe and the mini stuff and all the new races that he's doing, but also some of his past exploits, as well as I kind of put him on the spot. Why in the heck any of us do this sort of thing? Why go out and risk it all? What that spirit of adventure really is, because that's something that's always interested me, and I've never come up with a great answer for any of that. So Don shed some good light on that, and I really appreciate it. It was a fun conversation. Hope to do some more with this guy, because really is he's on the forefront, and he's providing, I think, more than anything, a way to, at least in a small amount, make the Southern Ocean a little safer for solo sailors to go and rip around in it. So very, very well done. Big thanks to Don for slicing some time out of his busy schedule to just sit down and chat with the podcast. Now, before we start the show, like I always say, if you can help out and support this podcast, it's absolutely amazing in this channel. Those who do, thank you all so very much. It's really incredible. We've got links in the description for everything, and I'm going to throw some links in for Don's website and all that, so you can check his stuff out. We've got some big adventures planned. I'm going to be out on the water with Matt Rutherford and the Ocean Research Project coming up in July, and then hopefully getting Sparrow ready to do a plastics research project of our own in conjunction with the Ocean Research Project. They'll basically teach me how to do this, but down in the South Atlantic Ocean, place that hasn't been surveyed in a while, hasn't really been surveyed thoroughly, and my hope is to add that into this next adventure this winter. These things come with a pretty hefty price tag, and we've already had a couple sponsors reach out, but we're going to need a whole lot of help if we want to kick this off. The goal is to basically do a water world version of the Truman Show. We're going to try and get Starlink, 1 terabyte plan, be able to upload, live stream, all that sort of stuff while we're out there. But to be able to do so, yeah, we need help. So if you feel inclined and you want to see more of this sort of content and more podcasts and more content, go ahead and feel free to check some of the links in the description, and that's how those go directly towards the adventures to be had. Other than that, we've also got links for shirts, merch, all that sort of stuff, books, audio books, and children's books as well, believe it or not. I like to exchange goods for those donations, and usually with some of that stuff, just feels good. So without further ado, though, all the ad stuff. Oh, and if you want to reach out to me and to the show, sailingintooblivion.com, and that's for speaking engagements, coaching sessions, actually hopping on board and doing training, whatever you need, we'll try and fill that gap. So without further ado, my conversation with Don McIntyre of the GGR, the man behind the round the world sailing races. But Don, thank you so much for slicing away some time. I can only imagine how busy you actually are with all the endeavors that you're coordinating, man.
It's a bit of a scam. I keep getting distracted, I mean, I'm feeling guilty right now because not for this one, for the last few hours I'm meant to be working, but I'm distracted onto some fun stuff, and I'm doing fun stuff, not working.
What are you cooking up right now? What are you doing?
Just a little personal project. Long story. Hey, just before we go, are we on video or just on audio?
We're on video and audio, and
okay. I haven't got a very good backdrop. Yours is much more interesting. I'm in my office.
That's all right. Hey, it's no worries, and it's totally up to you.
There.
Oh, nice. Well, I've got the mini mighty Sparrow in my background.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. Well, I've got a few models up here. This is one of my favourites. This is Tracker. This is the original
Oh,
John Guswell Tracker, and I've got Joshua's
wow.
up there and Sue Haley's and all sorts of stuff. But anyway, we moved out of our normal office in Les Sables d'Olonne because we've
Yeah.
finished the OGR and the GGR, and so now we're sort of at home. And this is just I've got stuff everywhere. So anyway, that's cool.
Yeah, it is very cool. So has France been your just headquarters, home base now for years
Yeah,
now, huh?
yeah, we've been living in Les Sables d'Olonne now for nearly 5 years, and it's home. It's home of the Vendée Globe, home of the Golden Globe, and it's great living in France. I can't speak the language, but the people are very accommodating.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's
and
good. That's great to hear. Well,
yeah,
I
and
I
sorry, the French have got a passion all their own. I love it. It's fantastic. So, I'm an
well,
Australian,
they
but
they
happy to be here. Yeah,
they definitely love sailing, and they absolutely love solo sailing. I mean, it's probably one of the more popular sports over there. I'm
yeah,
jealous that I live in a country where solo sailing has never been on the forefront. It's hard to compete with the Super Bowl and NASCAR and whatnot, but there
yeah,
are some pretty diehard fans, and we've actually got a few
yeah.
pretty
Jeepers.
epic solo sailors over here.
You,
So
you,
we
we, we,
try.
we all seem to be getting swamped by women, but you've all of a sudden got a very high profile woman solo sailor there, which is
Oh yeah,
rolling things
Cole.
over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
that's cool.
amazing watching her rip around the world on that boat. It was absolutely amazing. She did a splendid race. I think like
Yep,
cautious but fast and well calculated. And I was just so happy to
absolutely.
see.
In fact, I take my hat off to her. I only started following because we were really busy, and I started to pick up on some stuff when she was about halfway around. In fact, it was when she had that big knockdown, that she filmed. And then I
Yeah,
started to pick up on it, and I thought, crikey's, she, besides everything else, her camera presence and this and the other, she did an amazing job. It wasn't an easy boat to sail, and yeah, I was very impressed.
yeah, it was really fun. I was chatting with her kind of back and forth on Instagram and stuff, and we shared. She had devoured a bunch of my videos from my trip around the world, and there was one in
Yeah,
particular where the first time I got to do laundry was when I was back in the South Atlantic going north, and all these things, and she had whipped out all of her like underwear and cleaned all that because I had done the same thing with all my boxer shorts, and so we were having quite a bit of fun on that. But yeah, it was amazing to sort of follow her. And you know, kind of on that note, before we get into some of your racing and all the stuff that you're doing, I got a kind of a personal curiosity for anybody that has spent a good amount of time alone on a small boat in the Southern Ocean. And you've done the BOC amongst other things, but there is a draw that place that variable hell on earth in some circumstances has on people, and it has it on me because even
yeah.
though I know what's down there, there's part of me that wants to go back. Do you have any sort of notion as to what that draw is, and do you feel that draw too?
Well, I think it's like anything, when you get there on by yourself, it's like it heightens the senses. You don't just sort of step out into the Southern Ocean. Although I'm from South Australia, and the Southern Ocean is just, over the
Yeah,
horizon. We're right there. But yeah, you actually sail there in your own little boat, and so you've paid the price to get there, and there's usually a huge effort, getting the boat organised and things like that. And so when you're there, everything's just electric. It's living life. It's the ultimate expression of freedom on any ocean. But when you're down there, it's a special place, and not everyone gets there. You know, and so it's also got this profound effect because it's one of the world's great last wilderness areas where there is nothing. It's just an interesting part of the world that's very serene, very pure. So I think the impact is twofold. When you go through anything that's really horrible and harsh and beautiful and spectacular and exciting and stuff, it has the biggest impact when it's over because you sit and reflect. You can never get rid of it. It's just stuck in your mind. So, and I've got a very simple philosophy about life. We all need adventure because we're we used to be hunter-gatherers, and we used to go out and try and kill our food to eat. And if we didn't kill something to eat it, we weren't very happy. And now we have this, focus on society about a high standard of living, which is what I call flatlining, and I refer to it all the time. If you get hot, you put the air conditioner on, and if you get cold, you put the heater on. So all these spikes that normally go above and below the line of mediocrity and a high standard of living, we miss out on. The better standard of living you get, this line just gets flatter and flatter. It has no peaks and troughs. And then you start to get bored. It doesn't matter whether you're rich, poor, indifferent, or whatever. It's just in your genes, it's human nature. So all of that molds in. And the Southern Ocean, if you're going to circumnavigate, and I've only done it once, the Southern Ocean is the real expression of when you're completely on your own. The rest of the world's up the top of the world. You're down there, and it's very beautiful, and you see some amazing things, and you're really living. I think there's no simple answer. It's a conglomeration of everything, put together. But yeah, I want to go back too, so hopefully 27 is my deal in 2027.
Yeah. Now, is that in 27, is that the mini, or is that the fully crewed one?
No, that'll be the Ocean Globe. The plans are meant to change, and you have dreams. And as you probably know, my life cycle was about every 4 or 5 years I'd do another little adventure, And it was actually when I supported Jessica Watson to sail around the world that she really pissed me off, because I was following her stuff thinking, holy dooly, she's having more fun than me. And at the time I was doing the bounty boat expedition, my little open boat across the Pacific, following the footsteps of William Bligh. So when all that was over, I just, Jessica reminded me how fantastic it was doing the BOC, sailing around the world by yourself. And that was a bit of a scam, because my inspiration went right back to Robert Knox Johnson on Suhaili. And, when I was a teenager, you're reading all the books about Matessia and so on. And so the dream started from a solo non-stop circumnavigation, like yourself sort of thing. The BOC was like, it was fantastic. It was, I'm not a football player, but when you take off in the BOC, I think we had 22 starters, right? So you had 22 other sailors all in our own boat, so we're off around the world. And it was a very there were some aspects that were very easy, because I often reflected on Kay Cotty when she went round solo in Blackmore's First Lady, the Australian lady that went around. She was the first to do a solo non-stop as a female, and she was completely on her own. This was back in '88, and it's completely different to go in a boat like yourself, even when you're completely on your own, to when you go with 22 other sailors out there in the same boats doing the same thing. It's like you have this team spirit thing driving you on. So when all that came together and Jessica reminded me how good it was, I thought, oh, bugger it, I'm really going to do this Golden Globe race idea, and I'll be sailing in it, to go solo nonstop around the world in little boats like yours. I really like the West Sail 32 because it's so similar to Suhaili. And my first boat that I started to build when I was 18 was a concrete replica of Suhaili. I never got there, but anyway, I digress again. So
no.
So the idea of the Golden Globe, that was my dream, to be an entrant. I was going to sail around in 2018 and finally get my solo non-stop circumnavigation in the Golden Globe. But that sort of went out the door because the event was really becoming very popular and we had no sponsors. And I thought, shit, if I do that, I'm not going to, I'm not going to get this thing happening. It's not going to work. Because it's funny, a line I often come back to, Philippe Jonteau, who was the guy that came up with the idea of the Vendée Globe, he did the first BOC in 82, and I met him there and worked on his boat a bit, and then he did it again in 86, and I was the chairman of the race then in Sydney, the Sydney stopover chairman, and then we did it together in 1990. He was in a 60-footer and I was in my 50-footer, and I always remembered one line. He said, because I asked him about the first edition of the Vendée Globe that he just sailed in 89, right? And he said it was really cool, but the worst thing he ever did was organise the race and compete in it, because it just meant he couldn't enjoy the race and he couldn't enjoy the sailing or the organisation. And I remembered that. So ironically, in 2018, I didn't get the sale because we had to support
Yeah.
the first edition. So I still haven't done my solo non-stop circumnavigation. And I know you want to talk about the Mini, the 580 that we sort of launched, this One Design class. But a funny thing happened there, and I won't go into why we got there, but I'll now go 2 or 3 years after we launched the idea, and I'm sailing on my little Mini now, which is a 19-foot or 5.8 meter plywood epoxy uh, boat, designed to race around the world. I'm sailing it solo across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is that about halfway across, I'm thinking it was a fantastic experience. I really enjoyed it. It proved the seaworthiness of the boat and how much fun it is to sail and all these things. But I had this amazing moment where halfway through, I finally worked out what 40 years of adventuring, pretty much full time, was all about. I finally had my answer to the question why. And what it was, I finally realized that I'd been doing all these things to absolutely prove something to myself, right? And so this was in 2021. And I looked
Yeah.
at it, and two things happened in context. One was that, holy dooly, I've already done a solo circumnavigation. I've been adventuring all my life. We just did the GGR 2018 edition. We're about to set up the next edition, and I'm getting older, right? I'm 65 or 67 or something at that stage. And I'm thinking, shit, I don't have to prove anything to myself anymore. I don't have to prove anything to anyone. Who gives a damn? So I all of a sudden I lost the desire to spend 220 days in a little boat sailing around the world solo because I'm enjoying people and I'm enjoying, other social things, that you don't get when you isolate yourself on the boat. So that dream's gone. I don't have to do another solo non-stop circumnavigation, but I still want to get back to the Southern Ocean. So I will hopefully be skippering a boat in the 2027 Ocean Globe race with a crew. And that'll get me back there,
Wow.
and it'll be quite a lot of fun because we can share the experience with people and so on.
Well,
Okay.
it's interesting that you talk about that because that's something that I'm sort of finding as well. In that I've started doing a lot of coaching and sort of consulting where people will basically get me on their boat that they're having trouble sort of with different aspects, or they want to learn about the offshore world. And so I'll hop on board for a few days or a week, and then we'll go out and do a 600-mile passage or something like that. And sharing the knowledge that I've gained has been so rewarding to just do that with people and watch as they get to sort of their learning curve just goes straight up, and you get to kind of download all this information to them. It's really amazing. I mean, when kind of the shit hits the fan, and you can tell they're nervous and I'm nervous, but I'm not showing it. And they look back at you and you're just sort of steely eyed, like, yeah, no big deal. And you can see the confidence that brings them. It is. There's a big aspect of that. I mean, I don't think I'm finished doing any of the solo stuff. In fact, I've got more stuff planned, but yeah, it is. It's pretty interesting, the human aspect that solo sailing has now brought in front of me. It sounds like it's very similar to what you're kind of going through, because it's hard to share the experience when you're all alone in the middle of a great ocean. But when you can bring that experience to people afterwards, I think it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and in fact, I had a big turning point again when I got to 50. When I got to 50, I thought, I've been having a great time up until there, no regrets. So I consider myself to be incredibly lucky. But I realized that, there was not an obligation, but if there's one thing that you can do to even make the world a better place, and because everyone's got different skills and different ability to help the world or help people or just get on with life, was my goal at 50 was to say, right, that's it. I'm going to start really promoting adventure, because adventure is a really important thing. It's all about responsible risk taking, and the world needs responsible risk takers. Otherwise, nothing would ever happen. If you just
Yeah.
did what you're told and you just did the same as you learn at school and you just did all these different things and you went to work and who's going to be the the leaders or the people that are prepared to have a go, and fail and learn from that failure and keep going and fail again and so on. So yes, so now for the last, nearly 30 years, I've been trying to promote adventure, and that's where our passion is. That's where there's the real kick.
Well, and I think it's perfect for propagating sort of that, is that you have to share it with people, and a lot of people just don't know about some of these adventures. And when you put on these big productions, these big races, it's really starting to get out there into the world, and you're inspiring the next generation. I mean, just like you, I blame. Well, I shouldn't say I blame. I credit and I also blame in the moment. Robin Knox Johnson for my trip going around, and I only say blame because when you're going through a force 10 gale in the Southern Ocean, you start thinking about why the heck you're down there, and
Yeah.
I'd be like, Knox Johnson, man, why did I read that book? But yeah, those inspirations, we have to do that for the next generation, just like his generation did for us. I mean, I was absolutely just enamored by reading A Voyage for Madmen and learning about that 1968-69 Golden Globe, and just the greats that story is so incredible. And that was what I really wanted to, that kind of shaped my voyage. And I don't know if I ever told you, but I had actually planned in my 5-year plan, it was to leave in 2018. And then when you guys announced that you were doing the Golden Globe, I actually bumped my trip up a year, because I was like, I don't want to be out there with all those people.
Yeah.
But I also didn't want to seem like some American, pirate startup trying to just go up and shuck your race or anything
Yeah,
like
well,
that.
good on you. I didn't know that, but I mean, there's an interesting thing there. I'm going to digress here. I can imagine your audience is probably quite unique, but it's funny. Some people join the Golden Globe and they think that just by joining the Golden Globe, they're going to go and get a sponsor and that everything's and life's going to be cool. It doesn't work like that. And I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm a non-competitive person. I've never really been out there into competitive sports and so on. And what you did was really smart, because it's what I've been doing for a long time. I, rather than get involved with competitive stuff where you're out to win at all costs and be part of a whole group of entrants, I've always been a person to just come up with an idea and go and do it. And the beauty of that is that you have you haven't got 10 other entrants there that you're trying to compete with, right? For media and sponsors and bits and pieces. Right, it's just doing your own thing, and people are just following you. So I really enjoy historical recreations, and in fact, that's where the Golden Globe came from, because my original goal was on the 30th anniversary. I was going to build a replica of Sir Haley and go just ship it to England and then sail around the world in an exact replica of Sir Haley after 30 years, to celebrate Robin's voyage. And it didn't happen. Another adventure got in the way. And then I was going to do it at 40, on the 40th anniversary. And I found a guy who built a replica of Sir Haley in Adelaide, my hometown. And I was that close from buying it, but I realised I was getting older and I needed to do the bounty boat expedition. So I thought, no, bugger it, I'll do the bounty boat. And then when we were sitting in Tonga treasure hunting in this other boat I had, ice, and some gear broke down. Our magnetometer broke down, and we sat there for nearly 3 months, not able to do anything. And the 50th anniversary was coming up. This was in 2014. And I thought, shit, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So I said, I'll do the recreation on the 50th anniversary. And then I thought, oh, bugger it, if we're going to do it, let's do a race, see if there's anyone else that wants to go, like for fun. So that's how it all happened. So, but anyway, so you doing your trip, it makes a lot more sense, And I say, if they don't want to do it, in fact, it's kind of good, because I get caught with the name, the solo what's that, solo global challenge that Cole did.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Solo
I
global
think so. I screw that up as well all the time, believe it or not.
It's so funny. Anyway, it's kind of cool that he came up with that. I think it's a strange thing out of a pursuit race, but that's beside the point. But the beauty of that is that there are now 2 venues for people to go and do their own solo circumnavigation in their own boats, rather than buy a special one for the Golden Globe. And that's the long route, which is a very philosophical one that the guys here in France do. So it's just you leave whenever you want and you just sail around
Yeah.
as a conglomerate. And I really like the philosophy of that. And then there's the other one, so you can go in any boat you want if you've already got it, because a lot of our entrants in the Golden Globe, they already are sailors. They got boats and they understand what the Golden Globe stands for, and they've got to go and find a special boat and prepare that boat and face that challenge. And that's the essence of the GGR. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on at the moment around the world.
They're definitely, and I think it's absolutely great, because it just, I think, in a way, the video clips and all the stuff that people are able to share just help, because for most people, that even when I go do speaking events and such, most people still, when I tell them I sailed solo without stopping around the world, the first question they ask is, well, where did you stop? Where did you see? And I'm like, no. It was not stopping anywhere. And then all of a sudden you see it click in their head, and they're sort of like, oh, wait a minute, like all the way around. And so it is a very foreign thing for those who aren't sailors and those who don't really even know the route that you would have to take. When it gets fully explained to them, they're kind of like, wow, that actually is insane. That's such a huge challenge and a huge feat. And to be able to sort of share it, I think is absolutely great. And one of the things, because I've talked to a few of the entrants for the 2026 rendition,
Yeah,
and then I've talked to Elliott Smith. I've had him on the show and everything. And the interesting thing is, most of them say the same about why they want to do it. It's not so much to win the race, but they want to do that route. They want to do a solo nonstop.
yeah,
And what I think you have provided more than anybody else is the fact that somehow you have at least tampened down the danger level because of the organization and all the hard work that you guys do. And then also having other competitors down there. But I don't want to say you've made the Southern Ocean safe, but I could definitely say you've made it safer for sailors to go down there and try and live that dream. Because, I mean, when I look at my trip, I realize just how much of a gamble with my life I was doing. It's very dangerous to do that without a support crew and a team and an old boat that you fixed up yourself. And with, I know my mother and father are very strong-willed people for sure, but I don't know if they'd be able to strong arm a freighter to get down to my position if I was deep in the Southern Ocean. But what you've done is really opened it up. And I know when I talked to Olivia Wyatt a few weeks ago, she was like, this is just great because this is an opportunity to do it, and I'm not completely risking my life in an unnecessary way. So I tip my hat to you for really opening that
well,
up to a lot of people.
there's an argument there which you're probably well and truly familiar with. It doesn't matter what you got. You can have all the EPIRBs in the world, you can have all the best satellite communications, and you can have all the best backup and race organisers and stuff like that. But at 2 o'clock in the morning in the Southern Ocean, when it's blowing 60, 70 knots with 10, 15, 20 metre seas, guess what?
Yeah.
You are absolutely on your own. No one can get to you. You've got to get through that storm. And if there's pieces left at the end and someone comes to pick you up, that's fine. But it's all on your shoulders. And we reinforce that. Our role as an organiser is really to look very closely at risk mitigation. People often laugh about our 55-page notice of race or something. There's two types of rules. There's what I call the concept rules. Don't you dare take an iPad or an iPhone or you listen to your cassette tapes or you're going to be in deep shit and I'll probably fine you. But then there's and stick with your satellites and your sextant and your wind up clocks and all that stuff. That's the concept rules. And then there's the safety rules, and that's pretty much, a lot of common sense again and a lot of training of the people and so on. But at the end of the day, boy, everyone that does it is completely on their own, and I think most of them get it at the end of the day. And we had a hard run on the first one in 2018. We lost a few boats and lost a lot of rigs and stuff, partly because we were down there too early, but also it was just a bad year. But the GGR is all about it. It's a race of attrition. It's putting yourself into a very demanding situation where the only thing that's going to get you through is everything above there. It's all
Yeah.
about your head. And
Uh-huh.
because there's always a reason to retire. But the good news is in 2022 with the Golden Globe, we started to have a few retirements going down the Atlantic, and quite a few, and there weren't many. We not lost any, but a lot of the entrants had retired by the time they got to Cape Town, and we were watching that development and watching the following of the race and commentary and things like that. And the good news is in 22, absolutely everyone got it, that the Golden Globe race is not about a Sydney Hobart type race. It's about the adventure, and the mark of the final challenge is to get to the finish. It is really a race of attrition, because if you haven't prepared your boat right, you're never going to get to the finish. And that's what makes it incredibly tough. And there is no other around the world race like the Golden Globe, and there never will be. And it'll never change much at all. We'll still be going with the old slow boats and sextants and cassette tapes and all that sort of stuff. It's part of the psyche. And ironically, the ones that finish, in fact, even the entrants, they get it. But after they've gone through the Atlantic and stuff, they start to understand the beauty and the serenity of actually being in touch with all the environment and just using a sextant and timepieces and analysing the weather themselves and all this sort of stuff. There's a real sense of romance and back to the roots, by doing that. And so we're quite proud of it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, because it really, when you have to go to that old school system, you are so immersed in everything. I can remember one of the things that I really loved about being out there for 9 months was tracking the path that all the planets in the sky were taking.
Yeah.
And, all the different cycles of the moon, and really being in touch with it. Because it just, unless you are doing that every single day somehow on land, it's just something that's happening that you're not aware of. But when you're out there, I felt not only connected to the ocean, but I felt connected to my planet and my solar system and, the galaxy, I guess, in a way, which it's this heightened sort of sense of being that,
Yeah.
as you're out there and you're isolated and all that, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, I've also always described it as a big time emotional roller coaster, and physical as well. But like you were saying before, I mean, when you go through those terrible lows and times where you're just absolutely terrified, you don't know if you're going to make it through the night, and then the dawn breaks and the clouds part and the sun comes out, that sort of elation that you get to feel is what makes going through that bad night well worth it. I mean, I always said that one of the best parts about the Southern Ocean is when you get north of 40 degrees in the Atlantic. That
Yeah.
I had 3 days of perfect weather. I call it, in my book, I called it my Shangri-La, because it was probably the best feeling I've ever had in my life when I finally knew that the Southern Ocean was behind me. But it would only be that good because I spent 4.5 months battling through it all to get to that spot. And I think that's something that, especially a solo nonstop, can really just, it hits you like a brick wall. It's an amazing feeling.
Yeah, yeah. As I say, I never did the non-stop, but exactly the same when you finally turn the corner around Cape Horn and get up there. As much as it was fantastic, and Cape Horn being very emotional, it's like, it's just like this huge weight off your shoulders, thinking, holy shit, all of a sudden, where's the swells? It's all just gone. And then you get clobbered when you get a couple, get 500 miles north, there's a little bit more to go.
Yeah, right. I know. Oh, it's, you're down there so far south. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Well, can I ask you, so with all the different adventures that you've done, is there one in particular that stands out as probably the most important or the most memorable for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the bounty boat expedition.
There's
a lot of people might not know the story. Anyone in the West or in England and Australia and stuff do, but there's a mutiny called Mutiny on the Bounty. With William Bligh, right? So the square rigger, and I'll cut to the quick. They had a mutiny on board, and the captain and 18 of his men were put over the side with with a longboat, effectively, and some very basic provisions. Just a bundle of bits. And he had a sextant and an octant and no charts and no effective timepiece. And basically, the crew then sailed the boat back to Tahiti, Pitcairn Island, and that was the end of it. They thought that Bligh and his men would die, but in actual fact, they lost one man who got killed in Tonga by the locals, because the mutiny took place in the Kingdom of Tonga, and they sailed this open boat for nearly 4,000 miles across the Pacific and only stopped on a couple of occasions. And they all survived except for the guy that got killed in Tonga. And it was a fascinating story. And in '83, there was a descendant of Bligh who'd actually recreated the journey in exactly the same boat, but he used all modern technology. They were using an Argos transmitter, and they'd stop and stay in motels and stuff like that as they're sailing along. And I thought, holy dooly, the way to do that is exactly the same as Bligh. So effectively, and I'll keep it short, I built a 25-foot open whaler, and me and three other guys, we only took the same things that Bligh had. Now, he had 18 men, and there was only 4 of us, right?
Yeah.
But it still meant that we only had 2 weeks' worth of water when we set off. We had one chart that was for the whole of the half of the world. We had an octant and a sextant and a wind-up clock that was no good, and no toilet paper, no torches, just nothing. We just left, right? And the food, so we'd get 2 survival biscuits in the morning and 2 survival biscuits at night, and then 5 days out of 7, we'd get 85 grams, a small handful of corned beef, because they had salted pork, but 85 grams. And that was basically it. And we just took off, right, in this boat. I mean, our freeboard was about less than 30 centimeters. It was only 2 planks, like this much freeboard. So we were really sinking when we left. We had all the best safety equipment, of course, and we took off and we did the same thing. And it was just incredible. We had the same things happen to us that happened to Bligh, and we stopped in the same places. And it was 48 days, I think it was. I lost 18 kilos. I had kidney stones on the way. We got capsized. We never inverted. We got capsized about 4 times, I think it was. And we nearly died on one occasion. We had a very serious situation, but we survived. But imagine this. It's just this timber whaleboat with ropes and sails and knife and nails and we just buggered off. And it was fantastic. It was the best adventure I've ever done. It was quite an amazing situation. So it was historically relevant. It was very challenging. It was just a lot of fun. In its simplicity.
Oh, mighty. Well, and it's so funny because I can definitely place myself in that situation, and I know in the moment there must have been just absolute misery where you're just like, what have I gotten myself into? Why did I choose this? But I've always said there's 2 types of adventures. There's the ones that are fun while you're doing them, and then there's the ones that are fun after you're done. And that one sounds like it's probably a bit of both, really, because you're out there so long.
It was a good mix. We had some beautiful experiences, just fantastic. And, it was really cool. And in fact, that's what finally triggered the whole idea with the Class Globe 580, because when we're doing it, you're sailing downwind. You go from Tonga across through Vanuatu and Fiji and all the way to the Queensland and the far north Queensland, and then over the top of Australia. And I thought, wow, what a good race that would be. I had one of my mates on board was Quilter, Dave Price, and I said, hey, Quilter, we could make up some simple plywood boats that fit in a 20-foot container, and the rules would be plywood boat, 20-foot container, ship it to Tonga. And we race these boats all the way to Kapanga. We call it the Bligh Challenge, And we were scheming all this while we were sitting there dreaming about life and stuff. But that would never have worked because it's too expensive to ship boats to Tonga and then ship them out again at Kapanga at the end. And I have different people and different events that inspire me, but I always remember a little 19-footer called Willing Griffin that sailed in one of the first Ostars, the single-hand transatlantic race. Back in the 70s, and I've always thought, wow. So in the end, one thing leading to another before COVID, that's when I thought, I could see a 2-year window coming up for me in our plans in Tonga, because we were living in Tonga at the time. And I thought, shit, now's the time to build the boat and do the transatlantic in a 20-foot, plywood boat. And so I
Yeah.
worked with Janis Madursky, a guy in Poland, and we designed this boat. And then while I'm doing that, I'm thinking, we should make it a class, a one design class, see if others want to build the boats. And we'll race across the Atlantic. And then I'm thinking, shit, this boat is really good. It's much better than, if it's going across the Atlantic, you can take it around the world. And, John Guswell was always a bit of a cool dude, going around in a small boat. So they'll bugger it. Let's race them around the world. So we conceived the design specifically to race it around the world, and that made the Atlantic crossing a lot easier. So we started that in 2019, right at the beginning of COVID, and now we've got 220 builders in 27 countries around the world, and we've got it'll be between 14 and 18 boats are going to be on the start line for the Mini Globe race in February next year, which is crazy.
Oh, wow.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. And that one goes through the canal, though, right?
Yeah. It basically, as a qualifier, you're going to race across the Atlantic from Portugal to Antigua in the Caribbean, and then the Mini Globe race proper will start in Antigua, right? And it'll go from Antigua to Panama. That's leg one, okay? And then we truck them across in Panama, and then the next leg for the leg two goes from Panama to Fiji, and there'll be a mass restart in Fiji. But there's compulsory stopovers, like pit stops, along the way. So everyone has to assemble as a pit stop in Papeete, okay, and they have to stop in Papeete for at least 8 days. But before they get there, they have another 8 days they can stop in any island in the Marquesas if they want, right? So they choose where they want to stop. So if they arrive at 2:00 in the morning on a Monday, the clock starts on them again 8 days later. So they're not mass restarts.
Okay.
You know what I mean? They're compulsory pit stops, right? So they can stop in the Marquesas, and then they have to stop in Tahiti for 8 days. And then they go to Tonga, and they stop in Tonga, which is about 1,400 miles away. They stop another 8 days or 6 days or something. And then they go to Fiji. Now, when they get to Fiji, that's the end of leg two. So when 25% of the fleet arrive, we'll restart it 2 weeks later from Fiji. Okay. So there's pit stops. Then leg three goes from Fiji to Cape Town in South Africa. But again, there's pit stops, right? So they go from Fiji, and they can stop anywhere from somewhere in either Darwin or Kupang or wherever they want to stop for another 8 days. Then they go through to Mauritius, and there's a 10-day stopover in Mauritius. And then we give them room to work the weather going around to Durban, and then from Durban they can stop anywhere they want for 10 days because there'll be systems that come through. And then they get to Cape Town in December of 25, and then the restart, the same sort of deal. When 25% of those still sailing arrive, we reset the final leg, which will be from Cape Town. That'll start late December, and it'll go up through St. Helena and into Recife, and then back to Antigua, and it's all over. It'll be about 13-month adventure.
Wow! Oh my gosh, that sounds absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, for anybody that's wanted to do the trade winds route around the world, that would be a heck of a rally. How fast are those boats? They're not like comparable to the mini Transat boats, are they?
Oh no. They're designed not to be flyers. It's not the fastest. It's designed to sail under wind vane all the time. So when I sailed across the Atlantic, I did from the Canaries to Antigua. It was 28 days because we had a very slow start. But I did the whole lot under wind vane. I was using a South Atlantic wind vane. And so they weigh in at about 750, 800 kilos empty. Yeah. Right. So they're quite a solid little 19-footer, but they'll carry their own weight. Right. They're like a displacement boat that can get up and plane. So if there's any wind at all, you're going to easily make 100 miles a day. Right. If there's a nice breeze, you can do 120 miles every day, all day, every day. Right. And then if you push it really hard and you've got to push it disproportionately to get it a bit faster because they're all the same boats. But you can do
Yeah.
150-mile days. They're actually quite
Oh,
quick
okay.
because they're very cool little boats. People are very surprised when they actually see them in real life, because, as I say, they've been designed specifically to race around the world. They're super strong, super reliable, easy to sail. It's going to be an amazing adventure for sure. Things will happen, and it's a race of attrition. But
Yeah,
boy, we've
yeah.
got some great sailors, some great people involved.
Well, and I noticed too when I looked at the pictures of those boats, they have the little Morticier sort of bubble turret, looking glass, that little
Yeah, yeah,
plexiglass dome. I love
yeah.
that. That's a
Well, that's good.
it's a very nice aspect.
As much as it's one design, we've got a very strict class. There's enough room in there for people to make modifications. You either have a raised sort of observation pod, right, with windows all
Yeah,
around it, or you can have a bubble, or you can have a flash deck. And I like the bubble because you can brace your shoulders in the bubble, and I can just about sort of stand crouching, put my pants on, and get out and do things. But they're a fantastic boat. They're really quite cool. And we've gone past critical mass now, which is really exciting because the class has got a momentum of its own. And because we've
yeah,
invested a lot of time and money in keeping it all happening, and it is very exciting because, again, with all our events, we've got the Golden Globe, and there's a bunch of passionate people that just, this is just exactly what they want to do. And then the
yeah,
Ocean Globe was completely nuts because we had 220 odd sailors involved, and every one of them would come up to you and say, "Oh, jeepers, Don, Jane and I," they said, "Thanks for doing this, because I'm living the dream, and we never thought we'd have a chance to do this sort of shit." And they're just, the Ocean Globe's a whole subject in itself. It was completely outrageous. The parties on shore just about caught up with the original Whitbread parties. But anyway, and now at the bottom end of the line, we've got this fantastic event, which I absolutely love, where you've got all these sailors there's some sailors there that are serious guys. They've just shrunk their world down to 19 feet because they really
yeah,
get it, and they love the
yeah.
whole idea. And it's a big 19-footer as well. It's not your average boat. It's quite special. So they're going to live their dream for sure, and it's going to be quite something to watch. And I think there'll be a lot of people around the world will hear about this because when you say to people, they're 19 feet long, 5.8 meters, and they're going to race around the world. They look at you sort of a bit strange.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, like you said, though, they're big boats. People have always said that about the West Sail, which is very, very similar
Yeah.
to Suhaili and everything, where there's a lot below that 32-foot deck.
Oh, yeah.
And, having sort of those creature comforts, I definitely really enjoyed that on any long trip that I've done. And those boats that you've come up with definitely seem like there's a whole lot more than meets the eye when you're looking from the outside, for sure.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly right. And some people, the other big thing that we sort of try and get out there with people, the Golden Globe race. I won't mention names or boats, but one of the boats there, in the start, cost like about over €400,000, right, to do the Golden Globe race in 2018. And in the Ocean Globe race, one of the campaigns was running up around sort of €6 million. And in the Mini Globe race, you could spend one guy spent over €120,000 building a Class Globe 580, right? Because he paid to have it all done. That's €120,000 for a 19-foot plywood boat, and that's what happens if people are paying to do it. Now, the other end of the scale, in the Golden Globe race, instead of $400,000, you can do the Golden Globe race for virtually nothing. You can do it for the cost of your entry fee, the cost of your food, and the cost of some safety gear that gets out of date after 4 years. And people look at it and say, it's impossible. It's not impossible. It happened in 2018. Uku, who bought a Rustler 36, was a really good one. Basically, he did the whole Golden Globe race, and it wouldn't have cost him more than $20,000, $25,000, because he sold the boat at the end of the race virtually for what he paid for it. And he just put a hydrovane on it and a couple other ones. And so and literally would have cost him $25,000. In the Ocean Globe race, I said before the race, because everyone said, "Oh, you need millions to do the Ocean Globe race." I said, "No, you don't." And I laid out a plan of how you could do it, and it cost you virtually nothing. And as it turns out, one of the guys did exactly that in a Swan 57, and he's got the boat's up for sale, and if he sells it for 250,000, his whole entry in the Ocean Globe race, except for food and bits and pieces, but including even the entry fee, right? It's
Yeah.
costing
It's
nothing.
covered.
Because
Wow.
he's covered, right? And the same with the mini globe race. When I did my Transat in the 580, I'd spent about probably shouldn't say 60 to 65,000 euro because I had a guy build the hull for me because I was too busy, and then I finished it off and all that. But two other entrants, Peter and Dingo from Ireland, their total budget to build the 580 and get all the safety gear and cross the start line in the race, Pete spent £32,000, right?
Yeah.
£32,000, and I got Jim from Ireland spent about the same, right?
See,
So
and that's totally
it's the
feasible.
same
Wow.
deal. I could
Yeah.
say to you, I got no idea what budgets you did, but you got a really cool boat, right? You prepared it well, all the rest of it. If you had have sold your boat at the end of your voyage, you would have cost a bit, but it's not what people think. It's all about how you do things and, having the passion to do it. And it's never about the money, it's just get into it,
Yeah.
have a go.
Well, and yeah, I mean, at the end of my trip, I originally had planned on doing that. It was just to sell the boat, but obviously you create a bond, and I still have her, and she's been my
Yeah,
home. So I essentially, after the adventure, got a permanent home that I could live aboard for all these years afterwards. And though she's
yeah,
been out of the water now for a year since I got turned upside down in the North Atlantic back at the end of 22, and
yeah.
had some injuries, but also damaged the boat quite a bit. But we're gonna splash back down come this November and head back out for another little trip. But
And people
it
say
is one of
why.
those things.
People say why. Why?
Yeah. Why do you want to do that? And hey,
Yeah,
it's the experience, and like you said, I think it's all about living. When you get out there, I feel more alive than I think I ever do anywhere else. And now that I've sort of found this avenue to share that with people more and more through either speaking engagements or this consulting stuff, it's absolutely fantastic. And I guess to wrap things up, I want to let you know that I'm always planting the seed with two other solo sailors here in America. Anytime I talk with Matt Rutherford or anytime I talk with Randall Reeves, I'm always like, hey, if somebody were
yeah.
to want to sponsor us to do one of
Wow,
these
isn't Randall a
races,
story? Holy dooly. Jeepers. Yeah,
oh, I'm hopefully going to catch up with him
yeah,
before he goes and heads north this coming season. I know he wants to go up to the Northwest Passage. The last time I talked to him, he wanted to go ice in for a year,
yeah.
and I got to find out why. I mean, talk about what draws you to the Southern Ocean. What would draw you to go ice in up in the North Pole for a year? He's a
No,
fascinating,
I get it.
fascinating guy.
There's a few
Yeah,
people doing that now, There's a few
it's
people. We thought
crazy.
about doing it down south, but we went and built a box instead. So, you know, that's the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Don, I can't thank you enough for slicing away the time. Please just keep doing what you're doing. It's absolutely fantastic. And if I ever get some big, sponsor or something like that, I'll hit you up and see if I can join in on one of these wonderful races that you're putting on.
Absolutely. Well, you got to be careful because sometimes now, because I'm organising all that sort of stuff, I feel like I'm a talker rather than a doer, and you and I are both doers, So that's where I love organising the events. Wish we had sponsors, and then we'd still have a few houses left, but it doesn't work like that. And the reality is, it's fun talking to you because I know we're on the same wavelength. In fact, this is the first time we've actually had a face-to-face talk.
Yeah, I know. We've
Yeah,
emailed a
yeah.
few times, but
It's funny.
yeah,
There's,
this
there's so
is
much going on, but it's been fun. So good to meet you. And I'm sure we'll catch up eventually in real life.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. I there was part of me that wanted to come over there in 2022 to do the just to see either the boats leave or the boats to come back, just to
Yeah.
sort of feel that energy. But who knows? Maybe for the next one in 2026, because I keep talking to more and more entrants for the show, and that's getting me excited. And I think that'd be
Yeah,
pretty cool to go over
I'll
there
have
and
to. I'll have to go back through your file and listen to Elliot. Elliot is such a classic. I mean, we got on like a house on fire. I really get
Oh
off
my,
on that
yeah.
guy.
I
It's
actually
just
just spoke to him not too long ago, and yeah, he's trying to figure out what to do and all this sort of stuff. And yeah, he's such
yeah,
a great kid for sure. He's got the
yeah,
whole world
absolutely.
in front of him to be that age
Yeah.
again. Man,
It
absolutely
was
love
the
it.
funniest story. He had no idea what he was doing. He was just rolling along with the flow. It was
Yeah,
fantastic. It was really exciting. So yeah, cool guy.
definitely. All right, Don, thank you very much for coming on. And
Yep.
I think all you have to do